Hi everybody, this is Angie from Tourangie.com, and today I just left the Greenbrier here in Greenbrier County, West Virginia, and I'm heading into White Sulphur Springs, the downtown area. Basically, I'm going to drive the main drag, the main strip. This is Route 60, down through the city of White Sulphur Springs and turn around and come back and act like I'm heading back towards Caldwell. Um, Towards Lewisburg. We won't make it that far, but I have a few things to talk about in the video. Of course, I'm tagging the past video of the Greenbrier because White Sulphur Springs isn't White Sulphur Springs without the Greenbrier. So go back several videos ago to the White Sulphur Springs video or the Greenbrier video because that is what has helped to make White Sulphur Springs what it is today. Basically, that's what started it, is the springs. This town is located near a creek and it's called Howard's Creek, if I'm not mistaken. Let me double check that. I just want to make sure I'm not losing my mind when talking about it. Yeah, Howard Creek. And, it's close to Interstate 64, but we are on US Route 60, and this is the downtown area. But the springs in the area, that is what has helped to make the Greenbrier and White Sulphur Springs. Actually, the Greenbrier is considered in White Sulphur Springs. So, according to the census, it was around 1980. It had the peak population in White Sulphur Springs at about 3,300 people. Now it's down to about 2,200, 647 families living in the area. And the racial makeup of the city is about 83%, 83.7% white, 13.5% African American, 2%, 0.2 Native American, zero point 0.3 Asian, zero point 0.5 from other races. So that's typical for a lot of the cities and towns in West Virginia. But you can see that back there, that was a cute little town of White Sulphur Springs. It's just a cute little town. Of course, the Greenbrier helped to build it, but a lot of people that leave the Greenbrier go to Lewisburg because that has a very cute downtown scene too. The area here is known as a quiet zone, and this was something I'm not familiar with. This the National Radio Quiet Zone. Services for cell phones include AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, US Cellular are allowed within the area, but at lower tower frequencies. I was not aware of this until doing research. The only place I knew that had cell phones restrictions was at what is it called? Green Bank in West Virginia, where there's no cell phones allowed. I believe it was called Green Bank. Let me double check that. Yeah, I was right. It is Green Bank. Honestly, it's not too far from here, maybe an hour. The Green Bank observation area. It's about an hour, I believe, from here. Anyway, enough about that. Um, let's talk more about White Sulphur Springs. So there was a big flood here that impacted White Sulphur Springs in 2016. That was something I had to mention. Flooding is becoming more and more common in the state of West Virginia. Uh, Heavy rain and downpours with the rivers and creeks, plus the mountains bringing water down from the sides of the mountains. That's making flooding more common, it seems like. Or maybe it's always been a major factor in West Virginia, but it seems like I hear about it more than I used to back when I was growing up as a kid here. So let's talk about transportation. One of the things that helped drive people to the area in general was the railroad tracks. And I mentioned that before in my video on the Greenbrier. The railroad, the Chesapeake and Ohio Railway, which is now part of the CSX, runs through the White Sulphur Springs area. This was once a part of the Limestone Flux cargo route, and that went from Hinton, West Virginia, all the way to Clifton Forge, Virginia. So that's pretty neat. It's also been known as Gravel Gertie. I think that's a pretty funny name. Right now, Amtrak does rail service through White Sulphur Springs on the Cardinal route. And basically, the Cardinal route goes what? Chicago to New York through uh, a variety of cities like Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., then Charlottesville, Virginia, cuts through here, goes to Charleston, West Virginia, Huntington, West Virginia, Cincinnati, Indianapolis, before it goes up into the Chicago area. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that is the Cardinal route. But that's a long distance, Amtrak passenger line. So that's a good, way for people to come into the area. And of course, the uh, airport in Lewisburg is a great way for people to come to this area too. One of the things I wanted to talk about was in 1987, the White Sulphur Springs Library was rebuilt from the old community house, and the library was developed as an educational source for the area. The building containing the library was renamed the Catherine Coleman Johnson Building in 2017 because of Catherine Coleman Johnson. So let's talk about her too because she is pretty awesome. So Creola Catherine Johnson Coleman. She was born in 1918 and died in 2020, and she's from this area. She was an American mathematician whose calculations of orbital mechanics as a NASA employee was critical to the success of the first U.S. crewed space flights. Isn't that neat? She spent 33 years at NASA and um, and its predecessor, and basically is noted for her historical role as one of the first African American women to work for a NASA scientist. So I thought that was pretty neat information here from White Sulphur Springs. She ended up, when she died in Newport News, Virginia, but she attended West Virginia State University and think that's just she won like the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2015. It's awesome. It's totally awesome. So a little bit more about her. Her mother was a teacher, and her dad was a lumberman, but also worked at the Greenbrier Hotel, which was it is the Greenbrier. That was just what it was called back in the day, Greenbrier Hotel. Uh, at an early age, she showed strong mathematical abilities. And at that point in time, there was not a school for African American kids past the eighth grade. So they ended up enrolling her at Institute, West Virginia, and that school was on the campus of West Virginia State College. So Johnson enrolled at 10 years old, and she graduated high school at 14. Like, that's unreal. That's awesome. But anyway, after graduating high school at 14, and she went to WVSC, which is a historically black college, and she took mathematics courses. Uh, and basically, she got her doctorate of mathematics. She graduated summa cum laude in 1937 with degrees in mathematics and French at the age of 18. And that's when she became a teacher basically. She took on a teaching job in Marion, Virginia. Later she got married. She's actually been married twice, but with her career with NASA, that is what is so neat because she worked in calculating trajectories and launching windows and also emergency return paths for Project Mercury space flights. Those flights included astronauts like uh, John Glenn, Alan Shepard. It's really neat to know that somebody, well, first off, from West Virginia, somebody from a little town of White Sulphur Springs, and on top of it all, being African American was able to do this. So I think it's great, and I had to point that out in the video. Well, I hope you've learned a little bit and have enjoyed this White Sulphur Springs video. This is Angie from Tourangie.com. Come to my website, read my blogs, make appointments so I can help you plan your next travel adventure. Talk to you later.